The team logos in the NFL are perhaps some of the best and most recognizable in all of professional sports. But just because some of them are incredible and memorable and timeless doesn't mean all of them have been.
I don't know, it looks like a wave.
Okay.
The LA wave.
No.
We've seen some iterations of team logos over the years that, well, been an absolute embarrassment. So, without further ado, let us take a look back at some of the worst logos that the NFL has ever seen. Let's start with what many people believe is the single worst logo in the NFL today. And that, my friends, is the new Los Angeles Rams logo that the team rolled out in 2020 after finalizing its move back to the City of Angels. This new logo was meant to match up new team colors with the team's new look uniforms and really cement the team's brand and its return to its former home city. After all, it had been decades since the team belonged to Los Angeles, and it had this brand new state-of-the-art facility, SoFi Stadium, to play its home games in. To put it simply, the franchise needed a fresh look to go with all that. And, man oh man, did they miss the boat on this one. This logo looks like something that a young teenager might design in franchise mode. Look at this thing! It's simply ridiculous. At least the team had a good sense of humor about the situation and put on a rare display of authenticity by letting the team CEO Kevin Demoff read mean tweets about their new logo aloud on the internet like it was a late-night TV sketch.
There's a Rams logo debate. What is it between? Trash and hot garbage.
In the time since its initial rollout, the hate has become ever so slightly quieter about the heinous design. But even so, I think that you'd be hard-pressed to find many Rams fans that are excited about the new look. The New York Jets are another team that, even now in the modern era of corporate branding and all that jazz, simply has an awful team logo. It's nothing but a football with the team's name in football stenciled into the inside. Sorry if I'm missing something here, but where exactly does the jet come into play in this one? As far as I'm concerned, this should hardly even be considered a team logo. The utter lack of creativity is so overwhelming that it needs some other sort of designation. There are two key factors here, in addition to the lack of creativity, that make this logo so spectacularly bad. Alright, so first off, the Jets changed their logo back in 2019, meaning they had a great opportunity to start fresh with something a little more exciting. And secondly, the team's original logo, after it went from being the Titans to the Jets, had so much potential. I know it wasn't perfect, but there were so many cool ideas that the team could have used to include the jet itself. It's embarrassing that they decided a football on top of a different colored football was the right answer, especially with the jet design rotting away on the bench. Interestingly, the Jets' rival neighbors and effectively their landlords, the New York Giants, another team that represents one of the biggest, most powerful markets in the world, has an abysmally boring logo of its own. And again, the Giants, like the Jets, could have done so many cool things with that team name. Imagine a massive giant with its arms around the Empire State Building like King Kong, or a standalone giant running the football. The options are honestly countless, but instead, the team decided to settle on a swoopy NY in that same boring font that you see so many teams across sports use. It's truly baffling. I know it doesn't actually make a difference in how the team performs on the field, but if I'm being honest, a part of me genuinely believes that the franchise would be in a much different place if they had a sweet cartoon giant as their logo instead of these boring letters. And to make matters worse, they don't even play their games in New York, so either drop that Y for a J and admit that you play in New Jersey, or sketch up a cool design for me, please. Dumb NFL logos are not just a modern tragedy, though. To be fair to today's teams, we've seen our fair share of terrible designs over the years. Some that were so bad that I think they played a role in scaring today's teams out of working trendy cartoons into their team's logo. Take the Browns' Elf logo, for example. From 1959 until 1969, the Cleveland Browns, who were named after the legendary Ohio-based coach Paul Brown, featured this patently absurd logo, a cartoonish elf-looking figure, or brownie if you follow its etymology. Apparently, brownies originated back in northern England, and legend had it that they came out at night and contributed to some minor chores around the house, a household spirit of sorts. And the way that brownies were typically depicted appealed to the team's ownership because it was trying to make a marketing splash in the team's infancy. Now, I don't want to come across as a hypocrite, and I applaud the Browns for trying, but they swung and missed bad on this one. I like the idea of a mischievous little football character running around with his pointy shoes and pointy ears, but the scrunched up face and bizarre design make him look way too creepy for my liking. That's not too dissimilar from what the Kansas City Chiefs tried to get away with back in the 1960s and early 70s. I mean, look at this guy. I don't know what's worse, the bright red clog looking shoes, the heinous headdress, or the invisible pants that they so hastily put on him. And of course the racial undertones. The whole thing is just an abomination of the highest degree, and no football coach worth his weight would want this guy in the mix. Look at the form with which he carries that pigskin. Talk about zero ball security holding it that high and away from his body. All in all, just a massive botch job from Kansas City on this one. Now, in a weird way, this iteration of the Kansas City Chiefs logo is very much the other side of the same coin to the 1960s logo of the New England Patriots. One look at this godforsaken character the Patriots spackle onto their branded material, and you are bound to have nightmares for days, if not weeks to come. It seems impossible to me that this horrific cartoon made it through quality control, even way back then when the NFL was not the corporate behemoth it is now. That scraggly face, the weirdly colored football. There's nothing I don't hate about this version of the Patriots logo. At least they eventually made some minor improvements to it over the following 2 decades, cleaning up the design by softening the details on his face and the colors, before eventually moving on from the hiking Patriot entirely. Moving across conferences, and the country really, the Green Bay Packers, who have one of the most iconic logos in the NFL now, have some skeletons in their closet that are worth bringing up. I'm talking about the logo they used before the NFL-AFL merger, primarily from 1956 until 1961, because, man, is it a dumpster fire. I'm not sure what I hate most about this logo. Is it the bizarre form that the person is throwing the football with? Or how about the fact that it's number 41 heaving the pigskin? Maybe the horrific color scheme? The list just goes on and on. Packers fans should thank their lucky stars that the NFL and AFL came together and the Packers quickly instituted a rebrand. Because if this thing existed any longer, I don't know that the team would even still be in existence. That's how dumb this logo was. It's not just these human caricature logos that struggled in the old days either. We've also seen some pretty embarrassing efforts out of teams that are named after animals. While there are plenty, let's say, meager efforts, these 3 logos reign supreme in terms of giving the team's fan bases something to be rather embarrassed by. There is the pre-1990s Atlanta Falcons logo, the one that the Denver Broncos used in the early 60s, and last but not least, the Buffalo Bills early 70s logo. I know the Ravens are named somewhat in homage to one of Baltimore's most famous writers, Edgar Allan Poe, but I'm not entirely convinced that the Falcons graphic designer did not have a tinge of influence from Poe when he created this miserable looking falcon. That's what you want to call it, because if you ask me, that thing looks like a creepy robot raven sent to ensure that its football team wins as few games as possible. What's craziest about this one though is that all 3 iterations of the Falcons logo over the years were actually spun up by the same person, Mark Verlander, who personally worked on each drawing, with team ownership consulting him along the way. And nowadays, the Falcons have one of the best logos in the NFL, at least for my money. It's hard to believe that the same people who designed and signed off on the Falcons' current logo are also the same ones who gave birth to that pre-1990s atrocity of a logo. Alright, next up, the early 60s Broncos logo. The white bucking bronco that the team featured on its helmet from 1962 until 1965. Oh boy. I don't even know where to begin with this thing. It's simply one of the worst drawings I've ever seen, period. Its face looks like it's hooves. You can't tell whether that circle is a nose or a bizarrely placed eye until you realize that there's a randomly placed star in the horse's eye. I would honestly not be surprised if you told me that the kindergarten child of the team's owner drew this or something like that. What makes this whole debacle shocking to me as well is the fact that the team actually had a pretty cool logo going at that time. The one with the big brolic football player on a bright orange Bronco. A Bronco that doesn't look horrifically disfigured. Yet somehow they dropped the ball and put that redesigned abomination on the side of their helmets for like 3 years. Simply preposterous. And last but not least, we have that terrible red lump that the Buffalo Bills featured from 1970 until 1973. The way that this thing was designed, I would not be surprised if the same guy that spun up the Broncos helmet logo drew this.
What did he say?
I mean, come on! Look at that eye placement! There's simply no way that someone in their right mind should think that this is a passable logo. You can't see any definition between the animal's front legs. Its face is shaped strange. And don't get me started on whatever that is hanging off its midsection. It's hard to believe that any of these logos ever got the green light. But what do you think is the worst logo in NFL history? Did we miss any? Join us in the comments section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. Hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.